Okay, so the year Grant died, I was doing a Kundalini yoga teacher training. Before he died, I was really into yoga. I wanted to find peace. I was searching for this space in my life where I could find that part of myself that was the wholeness that I was looking for. So I got really into yoga. I was doing it all the time. And it was like I had these compartments of my life. I had my yoga life. I had my kid life. I had kid life, mom life. I had my wife life. I had my business life. I had all these little things that I would do. And they felt separate from each other. And as soon as Grant died, it's like all those separation, all those containers melted into this vastness of nothing, and everything became one. And it was this moment in my life where it was just survival mode. And so I stopped doing yoga. I was, however, in the middle of my teacher training when he died. And I contemplated, do I keep going? Because it was 4 weeks of about 5 days in a row of training. So I had done the first 2 weeks, came home, and actually on the second training that I was finishing up as I was leaving, and it was about 2 days after I got home from that training when he died, but as I was leaving that second training, this feeling came over me of something huge is about to happen in your life. And I didn't take it as a bad omen per se, but the first thing that came to my mind, because the words were something really big is going to happen, and it felt like something bad was going to happen and like someone was going to die. And I had never had a feeling like that before, so it was really interesting. And I just thought, I'm going through these shifts, I'm doing this yoga training, I'm ready for big changes. And the first thing I thought was maybe my mom's going to die, because that would be big and that would be super hard. And it just felt like death was coming. And it was really going to affect me, which is such an interesting feeling as I look back on that. So I drive home, and 2 days later, my whole world changed. I had no idea that it would be my husband. That did not even make any sense in my world. I had no comprehension that that was a possibility. So that's what it was. And I had this premonition before I left my yoga teacher training. And at that point, I didn't know, should I go back? Should I continue the training? And then I thought, what would Grant want? I think he'd want me to finish it and see it through. But my whole mentality of being able to cope and do life was completely shifted. But I did decide to go back. And so the third training, third of four trainings was about 6 weeks after Grant died. And I showed up, and there was a beautiful outpouring of love from my, fellow yogis and all that, but I just could not engage in the yoga anymore. But I have a funny story. So the last teacher training, I was coming more into the space of, okay, I can sit up, I can try to engage in the yoga. A lot of times I would just lay there and look at this training room, and I would be on my yoga mat and I would just lay there, and that became my yoga. Well, the very last training, I was still wearing my wedding ring, and I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, because I wanted to keep wearing it because I still had all this love for Grant and my marriage, and I didn't want to take it off. And at the same time, I was starting to feel this conflict between, when I wear this wedding ring, it signifies something. The meaning to me is that, I'm married, and I go home and there's no husband there for me. There's no dad that's playing with the kids and helping with the dishes. And it started to feel like this contradiction in my life. And I was like, I don't want to take my wedding ring off, but I don't feel comfortable continuing to wear it, because it feels like almost as if I'm living a lie. And every time I looked at it, it just would be so painful. So I was like, I want to take my wedding ring off, but I also want to wear a ring that signifies something to commemorate this life that we shared together. So I'm sitting there in the yoga room, in my teacher training, not thinking about the training, but just thinking about my wedding ring. And I'm sitting there, and I'm in my yoga position like this, and we're meditating. And all of a sudden, I look up and I look back, and I just feel like Grant's presence is right there. And I look up and I look back at him, and I'm like, oh, you're such a show off. Just because you're dead now doesn't mean you can show off. And just because you're dead and now you have these levitating powers, it's like you're trying to show me up in yoga too. And then I was like, and you never wanted to do yoga with me when you were alive. And now all of a sudden you're all into it and you have these levitating powers and you're being such a show off. So I'm sitting there and I'm like rolling my eyes because I just feel his presence and I feel it above me and I feel him smiling down at me. And again, like I said, showing off because I clearly can't levitate. He's levitating there and just laughing at me. And I'm super annoyed. And as I'm going through this, mental story in my head of these feelings that I have and this question that I am asking myself, what do I do with my wedding ring? And I felt again his presence and this compassion for me and how I was feeling from him, which was a beautiful feeling because I missed him. I hadn't talked to him for so long and it felt like we were almost in a conversation and we were kind of like playing with each other and bantering back and forth with this whole yoga thing because, he would be like, why do you do yoga? It doesn't even help. You still yell at the kids. And I just roll my eyes and I'm like, I'm not doing yoga to not yell at the kids. I'm doing yoga to find my peace. And maybe, hopefully it will help me to be more calm and maybe I will yell at the kids less, which I yell at the kids a lot less now. And I don't promote yelling at the kids, but we're all human, right? I mean, yelling happens. So I'm sitting there contemplating this wedding ring issue that I'm feeling. How can I take this off? I can't keep it on, but how can I take this off? And all of a sudden, in my ear, I hear this whisper, almost audible, but I feel like it was more into my brain rather than an actual hearing. But I hear the word Tiffany, and I'm like, Tiffany? And then I look back up at him levitating, and I'm like, what? Tiffany? And he's like, yeah, Tiffany. And I'm like, what do you mean by Tiffany? I'm like, Tiffany rings? Like Tiffany diamonds? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Never once in our marriage did I ever want to go to a Tiffany store, want a Tiffany diamond. And so this is how I felt like this was very much not from me. This wasn't some desire that I had. Now that my husband's gone, I can fulfill it and get myself a Tiffany diamond or anything like that. It just was really out of the blue and felt like it was really coming from the outside of me. And I thought, that's a quality store and that's really expensive. And I've never felt the need or even the ability to go into a store like that and buy, some piece of jewelry that's so expensive. Even my wedding ring, it was beautiful. But, when we got married, we didn't have a lot. And so it was, not a very expensive wedding ring, but obviously really meaningful. And so I'm sitting there having this conversation with my dead husband. And again, I'm like, what do I do with this ring? And again, I hear Tiffany. So I'm like, okay, is there something you have in mind? And the immediate answer is yes. And I'm like, okay, so I go to Tiffany and just like look and like, what am I looking for? And the immediate answer was, you'll see it. The immediate answer was, you'll know it when you see it. And I thought to myself, okay. And then I kind of started projecting like I'd like a wedding band, just like something with an eternity type symbol on it to commemorate this love that I have in my heart that I know will forever be there. And, if I ever get remarried and I have the opportunity and blessing to wear a wedding ring that signifies that I'm married to a man that's alive again in this life, I still want to wear this ring that will allow me to remember the first marriage I had and the first love that I had and the first, and the man that I had these children with and how amazing and how beautiful that experience was. And that, a new marriage will never replace that. But I also don't want to not be married or get married again or have the opportunity to invite that into my life. And at the time I kind of felt like I'll never get married again. That was it. That was the love of my life. I will never remarry because it almost felt like it would potentially be a betrayal to that love. And since then I've realized I have so much love to give that I don't want that to be the story, but I never want to forget. So, by the way, spoiler alert, this is the ring, but now I have to tell you how I came to find it because Grant guided me through this whole experience at Tiffany Diamonds. So I'm on my way home from teacher training and I have this little voice in my head that says Tiffany Diamonds, and you'll know it when you see it, and I have something in mind for you. So these are all the things that I felt Grant had said to me. And my curiosity is just piqued. And I call my sister who's watching my kids, and I was like, are you okay to watch them for like 2 more hours if I make one quick stop? And she's like, okay. She's been with them all week, so she's anxious for me to get home. I'm anxious to see my kids. They're anxious to see me, but I'm dying. Like, what could he have in store for me? And one of the other things he said, which was super interesting, because we were never really into really luxurious, worldly things. We just really based our life around loving each other and working really hard, and we didn't really buy many extravagant things. And so this was just not something that was on my mind. I felt like a Tiffany diamond would be so extravagant. So I'm driving home. City Creek Mall is on the way home. I stop at City Creek Mall. There's a Tiffany there. And I walk in the store, and this is pre-COVID. So the store is fairly busy, which is kind of unique. The sales guy was like, oh, it's really busy right now. It's not usually like that. And there's these wedding bands for women. And I'm thinking that's what it is that I am looking for. And so I'm trying to get into this cabinet, and there's this lady just like looking at exactly what I want to look at. And it's like she's taking up the whole cabinet, so I can't see what it is. And I'm like trying to like scooch up to her and like look in the cabinet, and she's like kind of looking at me like, why are you getting so close? And in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to find a ring that my dead husband is trying to show me. Like, I think it's in this cabinet. You gotta move. And she's just like leisurely taking her time, almost like she's trying to block the cabinet. So then I feel like, okay, I'll just look around the store while I wait for her to get out of my way so I can look at the cabinet I want to look at. So I circle the whole store, and she's just staying there the whole time. And I look at every single thing in the store, which was really fun because I'd never been in a Tiffany store before. And I was like, wow, they have so many beautiful things here. And I get to the very last cabinet in the second room, and keep in mind, I know that I'm looking for something specific, and I start to feel this energy welling up in my body. And, I get closer to this cabinet, and I see these 3 rings, and they're just little bands with this little infinity symbol in diamonds right on it. And it's in 3 colors. It's in a platinum, a gold, and a rose gold. And all these cabinets that I've been looking at, none of them have rings except for this very last cabinet in the very back of the store. And I've looked at every single thing in the store except for this, thinking I'm just waiting to go back to that cabinet with all the wedding bands in it, because that's got to be where it is. And as I approach this cabinet with these 3 little rings, I just zone in on them. And in my mind, it's like, that's it. And then I feel this energy outside of me of Grant, and it's like he feels so excited, and he's like, yes. So my wedding ring was a white gold. So I thought I'd always wear white gold. I always liked silver jewelry. I've never liked gold. I thought it's grandma-ish. And rose gold is like even more grandma-ish. So I get to this cabinet, and in my mind I'm like, oh, can I look at that one? And he pulls out the platinum one, and I try it on, and it's too big. And the other part is this was getting close to our wedding anniversary, and in my mind, I felt like this is what I want for my wedding anniversary, is to give up my wedding ring and trade it for this new ring that will be just a symbol of what we had, not what we are, because what we are has shifted. And as hard as that is to shift, and as much as I don't want that to happen, if I continue to live with this ring on my hand, it feels like I'm living a lie. And it felt like the perfect transition would be on our wedding anniversary, I could have this ring to trade out. And so we had planned actually to be in Hawaii. That's where we got married. And we had paid for this house, and we were planning to spend the end of the year in Hawaii. And I was kind of contemplating, do I still want to go? Can I take the kids? The house is already paid for. They wouldn't give us a refund despite the circumstances. And so, like, Hawaii was our place. It was one of those places where we had our first kiss, we got engaged in Hawaii, we got married in Hawaii. Now to prerequisite that, Grant was a pilot, and so he had flight benefits, so he could just fly to Hawaii whenever he wanted. The first time I ever went to Hawaii was our first date. That's a whole nother story. And I used Sky Miles because I had never been to Hawaii, and that's also where we had our first kiss. Then we went back a year later, got engaged, went back 3 weeks after that, got married. So Hawaii is a huge part of our story. I also had his ashes. I was planning to take the ashes to the place where we kissed for the first time, and that's where I intended to spread his ashes. So it just felt perfect. This was all falling into place for me to have this kind of ceremony with myself, to let go of this old life that I didn't want to let go of but needed to, and symbolically help myself move forward. And this ring was a symbol of that. Okay, so back to Tiffany. So I'm approaching this cabinet. I see the ring. I ask the salesperson, can I try that on? Of course, he gets it out, and it's too big for me, the platinum one. So then he responded, if we can order your size, but it's going to take a few days at least to get here. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I leave for Hawaii in 2 days, so I've got to kind of get this now. I'm like, how possible is it to get something sooner? And my eye just kept going back to the rose gold, the rose gold, the rose gold. And I've never worn rose gold before, never been into gold. And then I just said, can I see that rose gold one? He's like, sure. So, puts the platinum one back, gets this rose gold one out. He hands it to me. I put it on my finger just like this, and it is a perfect fit. So this rose gold ring is the exact size I need. And I look at it, and I just love the way it meshes with my skin. It's not too yellowy like the gold, and it's not too contrasty like the silver, because I have pretty fair skin. And, I just looked at it and I was like, wow, that's really beautiful. I've never seen myself as a gold, and especially not a rose gold kind of person, but I absolutely love this. And I have never felt drawn to rose gold until this moment. And then the salesman asked such an interesting question. He said, do you know what rose gold is made of? Or no, he said, do you know how rose gold is made, or what it's made of? And I was like, no, I don't actually. What? And he's like, it's a mixture of gold and copper. And in that moment, this word came to my mind, and I said, like an alloy? And the salesman looks at me and he's like, yeah. I mean, how do you know that word? Well, how do I know that word? Because Grant melts metals and he mixes them together, and he creates alloys out of metal. And he said, yeah, do you know what that does to the metal? And I said, no, what does it do? And he says, it makes it stronger than each metal is on its own. So when you mix two metals, it creates this strength that neither metal had when it was separated. And once you mix them, they can never be separated, and they're stronger together. And this is gonna make me cry, because in that moment, I felt Grant saying, you found it, this is the one, this is the ring that I had picked out for you, and I have scoured the earth. And I have the ability to do that because I can see so much more now than I could before. And I know where everything good is. And this is something that I picked out for you, and you found it. And it was almost like I could feel him just jumping up and down, so excited. You found it, like this little kid in a candy store. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is so perfect. And this is symbolic of this marriage that we shared and these children that we made. And then I looked at the price tag, and it was $2,000. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. But, for what this means, I think that this is the right thing to do. And obviously, after this experience, how could I not walk out of the store with it? But in my mind, at that moment, I start talking to him, and I was like, well, are you sure you want me to spend that much money? And, I could probably just look on Amazon and find something similar. And it's like he looked at me and he was like, if you get a cheap ring off Amazon, you're going to lose it. But if you pay the $2,000 for this ring that I picked out for you, you're going to be really careful with it, and you're going to value it because it's valuable, and you're paying an amount of money that's significant enough to solidify in your mind that this is important. And if I let you go if you go get a ring on Amazon, you're just going to lose it. And I'm like, yeah, you know me so well. Okay, I'll get the ring. So I got the ring. I put it in this beautiful box, and then I went to the place where we got married, and I put my wedding ring in the box. I put my wedding ring in the Tiffany box, and I took out this ring and I put it on my right hand, and I've worn it every day since. So that's the story. So for more morning stories like this, don't forget, like, subscribe, and let me know what you thought in the comments below.